This is the tale of America's favourite two-stroke and the story of how one of the most popular bikes of its day suddenly disappeared. I love digging into the history of our great sport. There's nothing I like better than sharing an interesting story from times gone by and riding the special machines that play the key characters in those stories. And if you watch 999 Laser regularly, you'll know that we like to do it the right way. I like to get the bikes we're talking about in front of me, I like to see them, I like to get up close and personal and show you guys the details. And if it's possible, I like to ride them as well. I mean, that's what they was born to do, right? And if that means that we have to go out and buy the bike that we're showing, that we're featuring in the videos, we'll do that. And that's exactly what's happened today. You often see the phrase barn find being used on Marketplace these days, and to be honest, I think it's become a bit overused. Let's be real, how many of these things have actually been found in the barn, especially here in the UK? I've come to the conclusion that barn find typically means just a bit crap, not looked after, and dusty. Like this. But I genuinely did find this thing up in a farmer's barn in the north of England. You never see these things in the UK, so we knew it was super rare, and I knew that I had to snap it up and make it mine without even knowing if it's a runner. There's not much compression there, is there? Now, this might not be the most famous brand for motocross history, but I'm guessing that quite a lot of our friends from the USA might recognise this machine and know its name, because once upon a time it was known as America's favourite trail bike. But for those of you that don't know, let me introduce you to the Hodaka. Back in the day, Hodaka were one of the top 6 selling motorcycle brands in the USA, only behind the Japanese Big Four and Harley Davidson. And to my knowledge, this was the only ever joint American and Japanese motorcycle manufacturer. And with names like Super Rat, Dirt Squirt and Wombat, the marketing was clever, catchy and memorable. These things were a huge success in the early days of American moto. In this video, we're going to delve into the history of Hodaka. We'll take a good look around my machine because I need your help to work out its true identity. And then, after God knows how many years in the barn, we're going to see if we can fire this thing into life once again. Whose idea was it to buy a 50-year-old Hodaka? To the modern, untrained ear, the name Hodaka sounds like some weird knockoff version of a Honda or some strange love child of a Kawasaki and a Honda. But in reality, the Hodaka brand is old, very old. In fact, Hodaka predate the Japanese Big Four in the motocross game, and apparently at one point, Hodaka was selling more dirt bikes than Honda sell today. So who are they and what happened to Hodaka? Let's jump in the time machine and find out. The rise of Hadaka coincided perfectly with the dirt bike phenomenon that swept across America in the 60s and 70s. Back then, there was still a lot of unpaved roads out in rural areas, and smaller bikes, smaller motorcycles from manufacturers like Honda were becoming increasingly popular with teenagers and young adults of the time. Honda's success in the US meant that the other Japanese motorcycle manufacturers were desperate to follow suit. And one such company was Yamaguchi. They were one of Japan's oldest motorcycle firms, and they found a partner in Pabatco to help them break America. The Pacific Basin Trading Company was a subsidiary of Farm Chemicals of Oregon, but they were looking to diversify their business at this time, hence the decision to get involved in the motorcycle game. So in 1961, Pabatco began importing Yamaguchi machines, firstly with a 49cc bike and then with an 80cc model as well, and these proved to be quite profitable for the Oregon-based company. And that 49cc Yamaguchi bike was powered by a motor made by another Japanese firm called Hodaka. And that's how they got involved in this story. This was the first connection between Hodaka and Pabatco, and sales were strong from the start for the Americans. In 1961 and 1962, about 5,000 to 6,000 of these little machines were sold in about 480 dealerships. But trouble was on the horizon. The fierce competition between the Japanese motorcycle manufacturers was tough for the little firms like Yamaguchi. They were struggling to survive. And in April 1963, Yamaguchi made the shock decision to close their doors for good. Legend actually has it that the CEO of Yamaguchi ran the company's finances into the ground with the large sums of money he was using to support his daughter's entry into Japan's parliament. But from what I've read, the daughter was successful and she became one of Japan's first ever female senators. But that certainly didn't save the Yamaguchi Motorcycle Company. The fall of Yamaguchi left their suppliers and their importers, people like Hodaka and Pabatco, it left them in troubled waters. It was clear that Pabatco wanted to stay in the motorcycle business. Both on a professional level, the Yamaguchis were quite profitable for the company, and on a personal level as well. The management and the employees at Pabatco enjoyed living this motorcycle lifestyle. Pabatco also had a dealer network in place and a strong demand for these smaller motorcycles. But their most popular item was no longer available. So they decided to embark on an ambitious adventure. They would design, market and sell their own machine for the American scene. They just needed a keen collaborator to help them do it. So the call went out to Hodaka, the Japanese engine guys. Pabatco would market and sell the machine in the USA and beyond if Hodaka could build a complete machine and not just an engine. At this time, Hodaka were just a bit over 10 years old. They were founded in 1951 and they started out by making transmissions for the Japanese motorcycle trade. They weren't yet a motorcycle manufacturer themselves, so this would be a giant leap of faith for both Hodaka and Pabatco. But the Americans didn't just sit around and wait for the Hodaka deal to get off the ground. They actually started distributing bikes made in Britain by the Cotton Motorcycle Company. Pabatco also went on to distribute Villiers, Avon and Matisse bikes until 1967. And they were possibly the only cotton distributor in the USA. They distributed that English brand until 1968. I mean, I was quite surprised when I read that because I didn't even know that Cottons made it all the way over to the USA. We made a video all about the Cotton brand a couple of years ago on the channel. I'll link that down below. Rumour has it that the initial sketches for the first Hodaka machine were actually done in a bar in Oregon with the help of a few beverages. Styling cues were actually taken from the Cotton machines. Those bikes made heavy use of triangulation to stiffen the frame, and the Pabatco prototypes used the same methods. The engine would be the same two-stroke piston port single that was used in the last Yamaguchi, but with a few more cc's and one more gear, taking it from 3 to 4. The crew tested this prototype on the trails in Oregon, and satisfied that they had a decent design, they went over to Japan to hammer out a deal with Hodaka. Eventually they were able to work this all out, and the bike went into production in 1964. The first Hodaka was the Ace 90, and it totally set the tone for the new brand. It was a street legal machine, but more than capable in the dirt. It had a lightweight tubular steel frame and the exhausts were high and out of the way. At this time, Hodaka pretty much had no domestic competition in the off-road game. Harley-Davidson were making two-strokes, but they had to be specifically modified to work off-road. And there definitely wasn't anything to watch out for from the other Japanese manufacturers. Their bikes were big and heavy, designed for the road and definitely not designed for the dirt. The only real alternatives came from the British imports, and they were often a lot heavier and required more maintenance. Although it only packed about 8 horsepower, the Ace 90 was lightweight, easy to handle, easy to start and reliable. And with a list price of $379, this thing was an instant hit. As race parts became available, the Ace 90 was the basis for a lot of different competition machines, and those bikes were actually winning events. For the first few years, Hodaka, not wanting to fix something that wasn't broken, only gave the Ace 90 a few minor upgrades. But in that 4-year production run, they sold more than 17,000 units. The first big change came in 1968 with the introduction of the Ace 100. The motor had been beefed up to 98cc and was now pushing out 9.8 ponies. Hodaka had added an extra gear, taking the total to 5, and they'd also beefed up the suspension as well. It was still a street legal bike, but it was a hot performer off-road for sure. In 1969, Hodaka started producing purpose-built bikes for different competitions, and they gave them wacky names that only added to their popularity. The first out of the gate was the Super Rat, a motocross-ready version of the Ace 100 that saw plenty of racing action. 1972 saw the unveiling of the Wombat 125 and the introduction of the Hodaka Wombat, the company mascot. In 1973 there was the Dirt Squirt, which was advertised as a fun off-road machine. There was also the Hodaka Combat Wombat, the Super Combat and the revised version of the Super Rat in 1974. But by the mid-70s, Hodaka were facing serious competition from the other Japanese motorcycle manufacturers who had started to take notice of the burgeoning off-road scene in the USA. In 1968, Yamaha released the DT1, and in 1973, Honda released the Elsinore, which was their first true off-road bike, and apparently that thing was marketed under cost so Honda could quickly grab a big share of the market. If you watch 999 Laser regularly, you'll know that we couldn't make these videos without the support of our channel sponsors, and we've got a new sponsor to tell you about today. When we were building this bike last year, I was looking for a seat to match the build in terms of quality and looks, and we came across this company, Seat Concepts. So we got a seat for the bike, and the quality of it absolutely blew us away. And I'm so pleased to say that we're now partnered with Seat Concepts. They're sponsoring the channel and supporting our videos. You can get Seat Concepts seats in different shapes, colours, grip levels, and they're all handmade to order in the USA, so you can really tailor them to your bike. Whether it's a motocross bike, enduro bike or an adventure bike, they've got you covered. I've left some more information in the description down below. Check them out. And they do ship these beauties worldwide. I've known about the unique story of Hodaka for quite a while now. And with the cool looking bikes and their unique names, I knew they'd be a great subject for a video. So I have been looking to get my hands on one for quite a while, but you just don't see them here in the UK. So when this thing came on the market, I knew I had to snap it up quick. And to be honest with you guys, I didn't even really know what I was buying, and that's why I need your help. As you can see, our bike has a big Super Rat logo on the airbox, but I'm not too sure whether it is actually a Super Rat. Obviously, these things were super popular back in the early 70s, and back then it was a lot more common for riders to customise their machines. And the Hodaka scene was no different. Seemingly, the Hodaka riders were renowned for modifying and improving their bikes. The different Hodaka models also look pretty similar as well, so it's easy for the untrained eye to get a bit lost and confused. But from the research I've done and looking at the engine and chassis number, it seems as though my little piece of history here started out life not as a Super Rat, but as a Dirt Squirt in 1973 or 1974, which makes that airbox cover a little bit confusing. But I'm hoping that you guys will be able to help me piece together what we've actually got here. What I can tell you is that it looks very original. For example, the sprocket bolts down here look untouched, like they've never been taken off at all. The fuel cap, this looks like an original to me. You've got the Papco logo on there as well as the Hodaka. So I think that's original. Obviously that airbox is confusing. I think the shocks are not original. I don't think they came on the bike. If we go over to the front, we've still got the mud flaps here, like the duck-billed mud flaps you see on the older bikes from this era. All of the other 70s bikes that we've had on the channel are missing these mud flaps typically, so that indicates to me that a lot of this bike is original. You can still see on the mud guards actually the made in Japan stamp, so I don't think these are aftermarket Preston Petty replicas. I think these are the mudguards that came out of the factory in Japan. So down here, the chain guard, that looks original to me as well, as does the exhaust pipe. Have a look at this thing. Super weird little pea shooter exhaust pipe there. Pretty sure that's original. I'm sure you guys will be able to tell me. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. What have we got? Is it a Super Rat? Is it a Dirt Squirt? What the hell is it? Either way, this thing is old and it's been sitting in the barn for Lord knows how long. We bought it for this video without even knowing whether it runs or not. So next up for me here at the track is to see whether we can get it up and running. But before that, let's head back and find out what happened to Hodaka and how they faded into motocross myth and legend.
The sun don't reach weary eyes, no, the light don't pierce down in the mine. 40 years, like 40 lives, only whistles blowing to mark the time. Oh.
So as I said earlier, by the mid-70s, Hodaka were facing fierce competition and they were struggling to keep hold of their share of the market. To combat this attack from the Big Four, Hodaka started producing 175 and 250cc machines in the form of the Thunderdog and the Road Toad. But both of those bikes were a bit heavy for true off-road use. Despite these new models though, sales kept falling. The market, a market that arguably Hodaka helped create, was changing, and Hodaka was struggling to keep up with the sophisticated R&D methods of the Japanese Big Four. The final blow came when Shell Oil, who had bought Pabatco's parent company, looked at the books and decided that Pabatco was losing money. So the oil giants shut down the operation in 1978.
Oh, try to save my soul down deep where the river flows. Lord, help me bear that load. Break my back for dark black gold. With every scar etched in my hands, that's the price of the promised land.
Big Oil had murdered the little motorcycle company. The irony. From 1964 to the closure in 1978, over 150,000 Hodakas were produced and then sold in America in what was really a super successful collaboration. The Super Rat in particular became a bit of an icon. Hodaka are credited with playing a major part in creating the dirt bike boom that swept across America in the 60s and 70s. Their little two-strokes were raced by a fanatic fan base. I mean, Hodaka had a bit of a cult following even back in their heyday, and that cult status has only grown over the years. All Hodaka engines were simple piston-ported two-strokes, and it was that simplicity that was a major draw for riders. And Pabatco were truly masters of marketing. They had these bikes aimed at families, mums, dads, teenagers, racers. Pretty much everybody loved these things, including the American moto magazines, who always had these things on tests and were always raving about them. And many young racers that we know today got their start on Hodaka machines. Guys like Jim Pomeroy, Tommy Croft, Jody Weisel, Chuck Sun, Kenny Roberts and Brad Lackey. These things are most definitely icons of a bygone era. They are cool, they are quirky, but they might be a long way away from what we would consider a real motocrosser today. But nevertheless, I'm damn happy I've got one in my collection for the time being. But what I don't know is whether we have a working Hodaka. Like I said, we bought this thing without knowing if it's a runner or not. It's one of the only ones in the UK, so I knew we just had to snap it up no matter what. But I have drained out the old fuel that was in the tank. We checked for gearbox oil, so I'm going to try and start it up now, and I can tell you, if I can get this thing fired into life, I'm going to be super pumped. Let's give it a go. It's really small, that's for sure. It's actually about the same size as a modern small wheel 85 we've worked out. So you've done the fuel already, yeah? Yeah. Both sides. Choke is down on these old things, right? It's not much compression there, is there? Ooh. Whose idea was it to buy a 50-year-old Hodaka? When we can't get an old two-stroke going, what do we use? Let's see if this does the trick. So the air box comes off. Get that brake cleaner in there. And hopefully that should do the trick. Alright, let's try this again. Hey! She's alive! The little squirt lives! There's a lot of vibrations for a little 100cc two-stroke. Is there a gearbox in it? Whoa! Oh my God, that's horrid! Oh! Ugh, that felt a bit clunky. Right, she lives. The little Hodaka Dirt Squirt Super Rat 100, whatever it is alive. It lives. What an awesome machine. A mix of Japanese engineering, after 50 years it's still alive, and American marketing muscle with that cool name, cool branding. I'm liking the Hodaka. What's next for this bike though? I'll let you guys help me decide what we should do. Should we just store it away as it is for another few years, or should we give this a full recommission, clean up, get it on track for a proper test? Or is there a super Hodaka fan out there somewhere that A, knows what this thing is, and B, would like to add it to their collection? If that's you, drop me a message on Instagram at 999laser. As always though guys, my name is Max. You've been watching 999laser. This is the Hodaka Super Rat Dirt Squirt. Until next time, we'll see you at the track.